Forget Hollywood horror plots. A real-life threat lurks in the woods, silently ravaging deer populations. The chronic wasting disease, nicknamed zombie deer disease, isn't a fictional undead outbreak, but a terrifying neurological ailment with no cure. Should we start reloading our guns? Or we should continue playing Resident Evil? Let's find out. When a mule deer buck died, it perished in a place most humans would consider the middle of nowhere, miles from the nearest road. But its last breaths were not taken in an isolated corner of American geography. It succumbed to a long-dreaded disease in the backcountry of Yellowstone National Park, northwest Wyoming. The first confirmed case of chronic wasting disease in the country's most famous nature reserve. Chronic wasting disease is a prion disease that affects deer, elk, reindeer, sika deer, and moose. It has been found in some areas of North America, including Canada and the United States, Norway, and South Korea. It may take over a year before an infected animal develops symptoms, which can include drastic weight loss, stumbling, listlessness, and other neurologic symptoms. CWD can affect animals of all ages, and some infected animals may die without ever developing the disease. It is often difficult to diagnose a deer, elk, or moose with CWD based on these symptoms alone because many of the disease's symptoms also occur with other diseases and malnutrition. It does not appear to naturally infect cattle or other domesticated animals. It is fatal to animal, and there are no treatments or vaccines. Chronic wasting disease belongs to a family of diseases called prion diseases or transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. The infection is believed to be caused by abnormal proteins called prions, which are thought to cause damage to other normal prion proteins that can be found in tissues throughout the body but most often in the brain and spinal cord, leading to brain damage and development of prion diseases. Scientists think chronic disease spreads between animals through contact with contaminated body fluids and tissue or indirectly through exposure to the disease in the environment, such as in drinking water or food. So how this is all started? Chronic wasting disease was first identified in captive deer in a Colorado research facility in the late 1960s and in wild deer in 1981. By the 1990s, it had been reported in surrounding areas in northern Colorado and southern Wyoming. Since 2000, the area known to be affected by chronic disease in free-ranging animals has increased to at least 31 states across all 4 regions that are west, midwest, south, and northeast of the continental United States. It is possible that the disease may also occur in other states without strong animal surveillance systems, but that cases haven't been detected yet. Once CWD is established in an area, the risk can remain for a long time in the environment. The affected areas are likely to continue to expand. As of November 2023, CWD in free-ranging deer, elk, and moose has been reported in many states of the continental United States, as well as 3 provinces in Canada. In addition, CWD has been reported in reindeer and moose in Norway, Finland, and Sweden, and a small number of imported cases have been reported in South Korea. The disease has also been found in farmed. So, humans should be cautious about the zombie deer disease or not. To date, there have been no reported cases of CWD infection in people. However, some animal studies suggest the disease poses a risk to certain types of non-human primates, like monkeys, that eat meat from CWD-infected animals or come in contact with brain or body fluids from infected deer or elk. These studies raise concerns that there may also be a risk to people. Since 1997, the World Health Organization has recommended that it is important to keep the agents of all known prion diseases from entering the human food chain. Scientists believe CWD prions likely spread between animals through body fluids like feces, saliva, blood, or urine, either through direct contact or indirectly through environmental contamination of soil, food, or water. Once introduced into an area or farm, the CWD protein is contagious within deer and elk populations and can spread quickly. Experts believe CWD prions can remain in the environment for a long time, so other animals can contract CWD from the environment even after an infected deer or elk has died. The CWD prion has been shown to experimentally infect squirrel monkeys and also laboratory mice that carry some human genes. An additional study begun in 2009 by Canadian and German scientists, which has not yet been published in the scientific literature, is evaluating whether CWD can be transmitted to macaques, a type of monkey that is genetically closer to people than any other animal that has been infected with chronic disease previously. On July 10, 2017, the scientists presented a summary of the study's progress, in which they showed that CWD was transmitted to monkeys that were fed infected meat or brain tissue from CWD-infected deer and elk. Some of the meat came from asymptomatic deer that had chronic disease, that is, deer that appeared healthy and had not begun to show signs of the illness yet. Meat from these asymptomatic deer was also able to infect the monkeys with CWD. chronic wasting disease was also able to spread to macaques that had the infectious material placed directly into their brains. This study showed different results than a previous study published in the Journal of Virology in 2018, which had not shown successful transmission of chronic wasting disease to macaques. The reasons for the different experimental results are unknown. To date, there is no strong evidence for the occurrence of chronic disease in people, and it is not known if people can get infected with CWD prions. Nevertheless, these experimental studies raise the concern that CWD may pose a risk to people and suggest that it is important to prevent human exposures to CWD. So how do we prevent chronic wasting disease happen to people? If CWD could spread to people, it would most likely be through eating of infected deer and elk. In a 2006 to 2007 CDC survey of U.S. residents, nearly 20% of those surveyed said they had hunted deer or elk, and more than 2/3 said they had eaten venison or elk meat. Meat eaters must consider many factors when determining whether to eat meat from deer and elk harvested from areas with CWD, including the level of risk they are willing to accept. The CDC recommends several precautions against consuming meat infected with CWD. Number 1. Test hunted animals before consuming their meat. 2nd. Avoid deer and elk that appear sick, act strangely, or are found dead. 3rd. Use protective gloves when handling internal organs of hunted deer and minimize contact with brain and spinal cord tissues, and avoid using household utensils for processing deer meat. Diagnosing CWD in deer can only be done post-mortem, requiring tissue samples from deep within the brain. If you like this video, consider watching more videos on better range and subscribe.